Hi there, it's Nicole here with a layered die cut greeting over die cut stars background. This is a fairly simple design, but it carries a big impact with these layered die cuts and then the big scripty die cut word across the center with some simple stamping on a vellum banner. Let's start with the Honeybee Stamps Stacking Stars. This kind of die set, a nesting die set, is going to work really great for this technique. We want to start with the paper on the foreground of the card and die cut it with the largest die that we're using, and then we will move our way kind of smaller and smaller. This Stacking Stars die collection has lots of stars, and it's the reason I chose this one over some others just because I was able to get lots of skinny little layers to do this kind of reverse tunnel effect with my die cut layers. So from some Hero Hues Amethyst cardstock, I die cut the second largest. I really should have started with the white on the front, but you're going to see it's going to actually go a little wider than my A2 sized panel. This is the second largest star, so there's one even bigger than this in the collection. I'm going to hold it up to the light to help line this up, and I will die cut then my largest star from the white cardstock, and we are going to start piecing them together one by one. Now I started by die cutting all of my colorful layers to A2 sized, meaning 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. That way I could simply grab a panel, grab the next smallest size star die, and line it up and die cut it and continue layering them one by one. The top layer of the card is going to be white. Then we're going to have purple, which is this Hero Hues Amethyst cardstock. Let's go ahead and adhere that to the purple. And then our next layer will be the Hero Hues Paradise cardstock, which is a really fun aqua. Instead of doing a primary rainbow, I went a little bit more the pastel route with my rainbow today. I think it would also be very fun to do this in reds and blues for red, white, and blue. I think that this would be really fun to create with school colors if you wanted to do graduation cards, maybe in school colors. There are just so many options, and not just stars. Consider doing stacking hearts or even circles and squares and rectangles. It wouldn't have to necessarily be a shape. There's lots and lots of dies that are going to work really well with this particular technique. I am taking the next smallest star shape now and die cutting that from some Hero Hues Paradise cardstock. And we're going to layer that one behind. And you can start to see how cool this is going to look. I think it just gets better and better with each layer we add. So I'm going to line that up and secure that. And if anything doesn't line up perfectly, I'm just going to take some nice sharp scissors and trim that up as I add the layers. It's going to be easier to trim them one by one than try to trim multiples if I end up having, you know, several layers that aren't quite A2 sized. There is room for human error here since I used a paper trimmer to trim those backgrounds and not a rectangle die. Next, we've got some KIWI cardstock. All of my cardstock colors today are actually from Hero Arts. So we have Amethyst, Paradise, now KIWI. We'll have Canary Yellow, Papaya, which is the orange, and Azalea, which is the bright pink. We'll go ahead and add our KIWI layer before we move on to the Canary layer. And I know I mentioned it a minute ago, but as you add each additional layer, it just gets better and better. I found it easiest to take each colorful layer, place it behind what I've already put together, take the next smallest star die, line it up, tape it in place with a little low tack adhesive. I'm using some Post-it tape. And then I would simply remove the top layer and run that through my machine. Now you're going to notice that as you get closer or smaller, that it's a little trickier. So I'm going to trim or tear down my Post-it tape to a little bit smaller so that it's easier to tape that down in place. I am using a nice strong adhesive around the edges to help keep this as flat as possible. Here is the papaya layer. I'm just using some snips scissors to trim apart any of these star dies that aren't already attached or detached. Line that up. I'm eyeballing it, no perfect way to do that here. Run that through the machine. And then we've only got one more layer after this, and then we will die cut the pink azalea layer. And then the white center of the star will actually be the white card base that we're going to pop this panel on top of to finish the card design. And here is the Hooray die that we will be using. This is the Hooray for You stamp and dies from Honeybee Stamps. You could very easily switch this out with many different greetings. Honeybee has a fantastic assortment of scripty style greetings and coordinating stamp sets, so you could make this work for birthdays or other occasions as well. So there is my final layer with the beautiful azalea pink. I love how this looks. It's a really, really cool technique. We're going to put some adhesive then on the back of the panel. We don't want any adhesive back behind the star. And then we are going to pop that in place right on the front of our top fold card base. I have already pre-die cut the word Hooray from black cardstock that I am going to put some liquid adhesive on the back of, and then I die cut one of the shadows from white cardstock, and I'm going to mat that on there, and then this is going to go right across the center of our star. So it's going to go kind of like right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and die cut a bunch of additional stars using the two smallest stars from the die collection. All the same colors of cardstock. And I'm just going to scatter them about. This is going to kind of help offset all of that white space, add a little less perfection to the card because our star, our tunnel star there is straight up and down. So this is going to add just a fun little kind of whimsical touch to this. We're going to scatter those stars. We'll layer some of the small ones on that next smallest star. And once we have these in place, we can finish our greetings. I'm using some liquid glue to pop those in place. Kind of from the top right corner to sort of the bottom left or just left of center. To balance this out even more, I will be taking Nuvo crystal drops in several colors that coordinate with the cardstock colors we used and scattering those throughout the design. I glued down the Hooray only underneath part of the H and part of the Y because the center of it's going to straddle where it's open there in the center. Then I'll take a piece of vellum and stamp a sentiment from the Hooray for You stamp set right there with a clear embossing ink and sprinkle on white embossing powder. I'm going to heat set my sentiment and then die cut this shape with a Honeybee Stamps sentiment banner die. I love banners like this that can die cut small strips of text. And I purposely stamped and embossed this on vellum so that you could see through it. I wanted to minimize how much solid cardstock is covering up that star in the center, which is definitely the focal point, but I don't want to completely cover it up with cardstock so that you can't see it. A vellum border, banner, strip, whatever you want to do there, makes it so that it's very easy to see that color back behind it. I'm going to be very careful with where I add my liquid adhesive, so kind of underneath the end of the R, and then I'll hide a little bit more underneath the embossing. I'm going to put an acrylic block on top of this to hold it flat until that liquid glue dries. That will also help hold my vellum banner in place. Next, I'm taking Nuvo Crystal Drops in White Blizzard, and on all the small die cut stars, I'm going to add a layer of this, which is going to give it a really pretty, clear, glittery finish, which adds a little bit of glitz and glam to the card. And then we will take Nuvo Crystal Drops in all the colors of the rainbow that are represented in the die cut stars and add those to our card design. So the pink we're using is Carnation Pink. And that perfectly goes with the azalea. I'm using Ripened Pumpkin, which is a nice complement to the Papaya cardstock from Hero Arts. And you can see I'm kind of adding little groupings of Nuvo Crystal Drops throughout the card design. We've got some Dandelion Yellow, some Green Apple. I did kind of apply a little bit to a scrap piece of paper before taking it to my project. I did not want to have any of the Nuvo Crystal Drops splatter and ruin my card, so I would kind of test them on a scrap piece of paper before bringing them to my card design. This is Caribbean Ocean, which complements the Paradise cardstock perfectly. I even think the color names go together, so fun. And then finally we have Crushed Grape, which is going to coordinate and complement the Amethyst cardstock. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this clean and simple rainbow layered greeting over a fun tunnel type die cut star background. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring honeybee stamps and dies that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm so glad you decided to join me again today, and we will catch you next time.